What is up, everybody? This is Destination the Show, episode 52. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined as always by Jeremy Nygaard, who exclusively wears that color blue shirts. Jeremy, sigh. How are you?
I'm all right. I feel rested, and
You feel rested? Why exactly?
because I woke up from a nap like 5 minutes ago. But no, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm frustrated.
Oh yeah, is this baseball
I
related?
oh yeah, baseball related frustration. Frustrated with the Twins. Last week or so, as Carlos Santana extends his lead to 8-3 in this game that may be meaningless now. I have reached my. I thought I was going to be like irate, but I'm not irate. I'm just deflated and I'm feeling defeated, dude. That's what it is. I feel defeated from your dog is in full agreement because you are muting constantly. But I'm feeling defeated about the end of this twin season that like 8 weeks ago felt like it was promising kind of a lot and like a worthy encore to 2023. And now it just looks like I mean, obviously it's not over, but it really feels like we're a couple of days from a long, long winter.
So Tom will be crying for different reasons this year as my dogs continue to bark uncontrollably.
Yeah, dude. My only well, my only like solace is draft lottery fun, but the Twins are in a terrible position for that. The chances of them like securing a top pick from where they would be if they miss the playoffs is like half of 1%. That's not even fun. So so yeah, I actually wanted to spend some time talking about the big league team with you real quick from the jump. Um, and I'm curious because I feel like you have not really intentionally, but just because of work and life and stuff, insulated yourself from a lot of the last 4 to 6 weeks of like real misery in the midst of this like ridiculous dive, except when spend time swanning around in the suites above center field.
Yeah.
So
So basically, my I felt like my season ended when I went and watched the Twins win a game in New York.
that's so long ago, dude. The Mets game, right?
Yeah, it's like the first week in August. That was uh that was the the end of the season for me.
So I want your take, even though you haven't been able to maybe watch as closely and pay as close attention. Are Can this Twins team make the playoffs? Will this Twins team make the playoffs? It looks like if results hold tonight, right? Everyone won. Seattle won. Minnesota are gonna win. Kansas City won, and Detroit won. That puts them two back with four to play, holding the tiebreaker against all of those teams. What's your thoughts, man? Is this are we just like clinging on to miracle hope, or is this actually possible?
I mean, it's like KG said, anything's possible, but it's not going to happen, right? I mean, two down, four to go. The team has looked miserable.
Yeah,
The fans are not there.
not there at
Uh,
all.
but baseball's weird, man. Like, what's the rule? Like everybody, with the exception of this year's White Sox, everybody wins like 54 and loses 54, and then it's the other 54 that really matter.
Yeah.
And so it's and like I remember watching last year's wild card round, thinking the Diamondbacks might be the worst team to ever make the playoffs, and then
Yep.
they string together a couple weeks, and so can they? Yes. Will they? I would guess not. And if they don't, or if they do, who really knows? The financial constraints are a real thing.
Yeah, so that's actually the next thing. There's two main other things I want to get your take on regarding the big league team and kind of looking ahead to next year, right? So I think we're both in that same boat where we feel like, yeah, it's possible, but it's feeling really unlikely at this point. what happens this offseason if they don't make the playoffs from a position of being, I don't know, 9 games to the good in the wild card race or whatever it is somebody getting fired or a lot of people getting fired? Is nobody getting fired? Is the payroll going to shrink again? Is fan resentment level going to continue to ratchet up this offseason before 2025? Because it's wild, man. Because, I mean, this is episode 52. This is literally like 1 year in terms of episodes, even though we've been going a little bit longer than that. But contrasting the energy of this time last year to now is insane.
Yeah.
Like me and Theo were helping Tom Froming up off the floor. Pretty much exactly. Pretty much exactly a year ago today when they broke the streak, then won a series and made the next series interesting too. So, what do you think the potential consequences are of them not making the playoffs?
Yeah, I think the expectation will be that a bunch of people get fired.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it'll happen, right? You think about this organization. Um, I was kind of surprised when Molitor was out, but I don't see a whole bunch of changes happening, and it's gonna be easy to blame the TV deal, right? The money
Mm-hmm.
that didn't come in, we had plans to build on this team, and then the rug was kind of pulled out from underneath of us, and we couldn't invest, and a bunch of things beyond our control. And we like who we have in place. The reasons that our guys are getting poached by other organizations is because they're good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Then it'll be, we had injuries to our best players, and it'll be an endless amount of next year will be better. And I think the fans just are gonna. It's kind of like apathy at this point,
Yeah.
right? They're not showing up for the games. Ticket prices are going to go higher. It's the gap here between what fans feel and what the front office is going to portray is going to be a pretty significant gap.
So speaking of other organizations poaching Twins folks, let's quickly touch on that. And then I have one last major league question to ask you. Falvey and Levine both out of contract at the end of this season. A couple of years ago, it kind of came out mid-season that Rocco had been extended. I believe the term in the media was quietly extended. Rocco Baldelli. No such news on Falvey and Levine. Obviously, I believe both have kind of had overtures from other organizations over the years. Do you think there's any chance that one or both of those guys does not come back with the Twins in 2025?
Yeah, I do. But do we know for certain that they're not under
Nope.
contract?
Nope.
And
But
so
like it, but so if you 100%, and sorry to cut across you, but if you had quietly extended them, why wouldn't you want to make public that information to get some good news out there? Because what they've done on the development side is hard to argue with how successful that's been.
absolutely.
I don't know why you would hold on to that and let people speculate about what the other possibilities might be.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of weird because you don't often hear about front office people and or managers when they get to the end of the contract. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't happen a ton. It happened with Council last year. But for the most part, if you get into the last year of your deal and you're a lame duck, you don't make it through the year. So it's a weird thing. It's almost like if they haven't been extended, it's because they've chosen not to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like Thad Levine has almost entirely disappeared from the public eye, right? I mean, he was in contention for the Red Sox job,
Mm-hmm.
and then he didn't get it, and since then it's like we haven't heard anything. And so I would say it would be more likely than that he's gone Um, I don't see Derek Felvey going anywhere. And part of the reason when you said, well, you could announce it if it's quietly happened to try to bring some good news. Would that really be the good news that fans want? Like,
What depends on it depends on timing, right? If you do that after, I don't know, Pipeline and Kylie McDaniel release their organizational talent rankings, and Twins have the third ranked farm system in baseball through two of those places, then it's easier for fans to make a connection like, oh, yeah, like there's some things going on here with player development that are really strong. If you do that when the Twins are seemingly cruising to a playoff spot in late July, I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, I would certainly agree that
right.
that might not land well with folks at this point, but I do think there was a point in the summer where maybe that made sense if it was to have happened.
Yeah, I just think there's way too many question marks for everything. Like the TV rights haven't been settled. We don't know what the spending thing's going to be. Or like I think Felvey is been great and you know kind of spitting the company line
Mm-hmm.
and like being supportive of ownership when maybe behind the scenes would be less easy to be supportive of ownership. Maybe he doesn't want to come back, right? But it's just there's so many variables that it's really hard to even guess where it is. It's weird. At the end of the day, it's weird that the organization has let is it 2 out of 3 titles since COVID, or 2 out of 4 at this point? Um, that they made the playoffs, and like you said, the momentum of last year, and you just let them get into the final year of their contract like that. At the end of the day, is a weird thing, and
That seems
so
strange.
maybe this offseason is one full of change.
We'll see. So there's one more thing I want to ask you about, and then we're going to jump back into getting into 4 or 5 minor league guys as our topic of the day, and we'll touch on the AFL too, but we'll dig more into that next week. So here's the kind of last thing I want to ask you about the stunning capitulation of the last 6 weeks of the Twins. How do you think about who to criticize? So I think most people kind of chunk it out into 3 or 4 different groups, right? So you've got the players, you've got manager and coaching staff, then I think you've got front office, and then ownership. Those are typically the categories I see most people direct their ire and frustration towards. How do those rank for you? Do you not think about it like that in terms of like, here's where I direct level most of my criticism? How do you kind of sort through in your head where to be the most frustrated? Or maybe you don't. Maybe you just ignore all of that because it's honestly a kind of difficult vacuum to pull yourself out of when you start.
Yeah. So the reality of the situation is that the players are the ones playing, right? Mm-hmm. And so you've watched me less a team that was really good for first chunks of the year be really, really bad for a big chunk of the year. And so part of me is always like, that's on the players. You can't just fire all the players, mm-hmm. right? The reason that the bullpen or the front off, like the lineup, whatever, I think it's easy then to point fingers at ownership because it's a financial thing.
Yep.
And so those are the 2 easiest ones to point the fingers at, but the 2 things that are the hardest to change. And so who gets to make the call? Ownership, right? And the people that they can fire are the front office, mm-hmm. and the managers. And basically, for me, I put a lot of it on, and it's even hard. And maybe this is not what people want to hear, but it's even hard to put it on ownership because if you are banking on, was it $15 to $20 million coming in, and then just didn't, right?
Yeah.
If you're banking
You're
on
talking
that
about
money,
you're talking about TV money,
yeah,
right?
yep.
That was 40, their original
Okay.
agreement.
And they ended up getting, I mean, so
Right.
it's like you got a budget. Now, could they have opened the coffers and done it? Yes. Has there ever been any indication that that is something that this group would do?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit with the Mauer extension, maybe a little bit with the original Correa deal, but you don't see those in consecutive years or 2 out of 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, it falls on the players because they're the ones that have to perform, and they're just not going to change. And that's why I don't think it makes sense to fire the coaching staff. Um, but something probably has to change, right?
Yeah. I would think so. And I'm going to quickly talk about the thing that's not going to change, which is ownership, because that's where I find a vast majority of my frustration lying, right? And I feel you. I also think it's easy to overlook. Like, often the line, right, is like, oh, the front office's hands were tied. That is true, right? They were given a financial ceiling, and on the pitching side, they whiffed on the moves that they did make within the confines of that financial ceiling, right? If we look at the
Right.
pen, the low wattage pickups, whatever, and obviously the conditions were more challenging, but it doesn't make the failure any less real. So, a couple quick things on this that I wanted to point out. This is from an interview with Joe Polad in April 2023 that I was sleuthing around when I should have been working more productively today. And here's a couple of comments that I found interesting, right? So this is the beginning of last season. Um, the question is, what's your sense of the connection between spending and success? This is his answer. The data would show that spending on your team produces a World Series. I don't know if I should say that or not, but that's what research shows of the last 20 years of payrolls. So my challenge is not that like the TV situation is whatever, and obviously that presented a significant impact to the Twins' revenue generation. But if you didn't have any inkling that that situation was coming or was at least unstable, then you're not doing a good job of running your business in the first place.
Fair.
Um, and then here's another one, which I thought you might enjoy in particular, being a season ticket holder, right? So, what aspects, Joe Polette, of the business do you engage in the most? He said, I've always had a marketing interest. I'll cut out some corporate speak in the middle. How can we grow our fan base from a ticket packaging standpoint? What did they do for playoff strips this year, Jeremy?
Jack the
25,
price.
how much?
Well, we did the math on it. It was between 20 and
we can't calculate percentages, so we said between 20 and 25% increase, I think is what we came up with.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
But I think part of that is when the Twins were winning last year, the Blue Jays series, the resale on those tickets were significantly higher than what the Twins sold them for. And so they're selling the face value on the tickets that they're selling this year are very similar to what the resale value was on these tickets. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so they recognized what people would pay, and so that's just what they charged season ticket holders. And I don't know how many tickets were purchased, but that was kind of because I looked and I'm like, a strip, like my strips, like the overall strips, and not cheap, but it's like I knew I wasn't getting wild card games. No, I'm not getting game fours or the fourth home game because they're not going to have home field advantage. But it's like when the entire strip was starting with a 6 and not a 4, and there's a lot of numbers behind it. It's like, how did that, because I'm like, man, that seems like a bigger number, and it's like they're the exact same seats. Like it wasn't that I upgraded my section. So, the funny thing is that it's all going to come back to us minus the $60 processing fee that
you'll never
we
see
got.
again.
Yeah, no, man.
And so, like, I'm not naive enough to know, it's an owner and there's vacant corporate waffle there, right? But also, it's just a bunch of disingenuous nonsense. Okay, let's start talking about some prospects. Let's get Theo on here too, because the first two guys we're going to talk about are recent St. Paul Saints, and so he can add a unique lens and perspective here. Before we dig into
Well,
our
while we're
guys,
on the topic of the bad ownership, I just had to rep the Oakland A's shirt here tonight because
there you
they're
go.
playing the last series here at the Coliseum, and it is a very sad week for all baseball, really, the situation down there. But never get rid of this shirt because you got to rep with Oakland on the name on it.
It's a great one. I saw people taking seats home already from the stadium.
That's a little too disingenuous because, I mean, Fisher doesn't own the Coliseum, and they still might, whoever owns it or gets next lease on it still might utilize it. So I feel like that's a little disingenuous to, the people who are working there day in and day out and suffering on a John Fisher paycheck. So it is what it is.
Hole, just knock it over.
Well, it could have been much better taken care of. So
okay, but is that on the owner? The owner's
yeah, it is on the owner. He could have put the money into it, but no,
you just said he didn't own it.
He doesn't own the ballpark, but he could have put money into the lease to renovate it. He has the connections, but no, he wants public funding from the state of Nevada so he can put a ballpark in Vegas. Anyway, we're getting off topic.
He's a piece of crap. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, not a fan of Fisher. Love the shirt. Okay, real quick before we jump into prospects. So a couple of people reached out and asked about AFL rosters. Those came out today. I feel like they get released later and later every year. We will dig into those in more depth next week. We'll jump into the Twins roster and then the Cubs and Brewers roster and cover all of that because there's interesting names between the three. For today, we're going to keep moving down the kind of prospect ladder, reviewing a great year for the Minnesota Twins minor league system. We'll dig into a couple guys here, recent promotions to AAA. We'll start with just like some headlines and then some overall numbers on the year. And then I'm going to pitch you guys some questions and get your takes. And Theo's going to be able to give us a great kind of perspective of what he heard down at CHS Field this week. So Andrew Morris is the first guy we're going to talk about. Headlines, I think, right? Outstanding strike thrower who moved up the ladder almost as quickly as Zebby Matthews this year. Started at high A, ended up at AAA. Generates less miss than Zebby, maybe like a half step down in stuff. I think that's fair. But now on the door of contributing at the major league level. 6 foot 195, so like maybe a little undersized, 23 years old. He pitched 133 innings this year across high A, AA, and AAA, 237 ERA, 258 FIP. Struck out just under 25% of hitters, walked under 6%. That's outstanding. 14 fastball up to 97, slider up to 92, curveball and change. Pretty deceptive delivery. So my first question I'm curious to get you guys' take on. Hearing those numbers, is Andrew Morris underrated and under-discussed because of how meteoric Zebby Matthews' season was with the Twins?
I don't think he will be. I think what he did, especially at the levels and progressing so fast through the system, has not gone unnoticed. I think the people who have the decision within the system, I think he's a very much a front runner for the minor league pitcher of the year in the system. And I think Zebby's struggles in the majors may take him out of that conversation. And since he was up there for 2 months, but I think if you're not, well, Jeremy, you may disagree with me, but if it's not going to be Zebby, then I think it's going to be Andrew Morris. And, he was solid at each level. St. Paul, things caught up with him a little bit, and he was in Zebby Matthews' shadow all season. Like all the conversations I had, whether it was with Jonas Levin, DJ Angle, with Wichita, or someone else, Pete Larson in St. Paul. I mean, there wasn't really too many conversations about Andrew Morris where Zebby Matthews' name wasn't attached to him. So I think he gets a little too clumped in there. So you do make a good point there.
Jeremy?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like the question was, is he underrated and under-discussed because of Zebby? And the answer is, yeah. Like that he was really, really good, and it kind of just flew under the radar because Zebby Matthews was doing things that, like, he's not walking anybody. We're going to talk about this literally every start he makes in the minor leagues. And David Festa had some appearances where it was like, oh yeah, he's the real deal. And at the end of the day, I think it would be irresponsible to suggest that all three of them are just going to be rotation fixtures right? And I don't know which one or two is most likely to be a starter, but yeah, 100% he was underrated and under discussed just because those other guys were so much discussed. And Zebi became a top 60 prospect in baseball.
Yeah.
And probably got the call too early, and that's why he's had the struggles that he's had.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I want to ask you guys next, because I agree with everything you guys have highlighted so far. I am really fascinated about what is the rotation of the Twins next year. I think we can at least like vaguely put that together. I'm really interested in what is this. I feel like the St. Paul Saints rotation to start 2025 could be kind of insane. Theo, who do you think is going to be in that Saints rotation to start the season? And then I guess my other question for both of you guys is, how on earth is Andrew Morris going to force his way into the plans of the big league team next year?
Andrew Morris will force his way in when someone gets hurt.
No.
I'm being realistic. That's how Zebi got up there. Joe Ryan went down for the year. I think Zebi definitely starts the season in St. Paul. I think Festa and Woods Richardson, it's a coin flip. I think either of those guys could easily, or both, will start the season with the Twins in their
That's
rotation.
you're assuming Paddock is going to be part of the
I'm
big
assuming.
league rotation?
I mean, Aaron and John talked about it on their podcast Patreon today that Paddock's likely going to be a bullpen guy moving forward. So I think second Tommy John didn't even make it through the first half of the season healthy. All talking points brought up by Aaron and John, and just it makes sense.
I love that idea.
Start at the top of the Twins rotation. Well, how does this look? I want to write it down.
Pablo, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, Woods Richardson, Festa. And this is me acting on Paddock being a reliever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you have Zebi, Andrew Morris, maybe Randy Dobnak, depending if they are trying to offload salary. They could even move someone like him.
He's not going anywhere. Who's going to pay his salary?
They're going to dump half of it and eat the other half.
How many years does he have left? One. Corey Lewis, he's starting at AAA for sure.
I think either one of Corey Lewis or Marco Raya is going to be in AA to start the season because there's too many guys to work with. And they're going to make some minor league sizing, like a Caleb Bosley type. I'm not saying it will be Bosley specifically, but someone's going to be brought in to eat innings. And maybe someone's like they did with Festa to start the season. I mean, he only went like 3 innings, and then Dobnak came in and long relief. So it is possible, these guys are here starting the season, and they're still ramping them up through the month of April. That's not uncommon. And, the veterans are not really going to be as limited. They can go 5 full innings if things are cruising for them, but they had so many guys they used in different games. And this isn't to mention that, they still had Travis Adams finish the season there, Jalen Nolan, who's mostly been a starter, but he transitioned to a reliever in the final week of the season just because he got the extension up in St. Paul. So there's a lot of guys to work with. And I think it's safe to say both Adams and Nolan will likely start the season in AA, but I would say by Memorial Day, both of them could be back up there, and if not as starters, as relievers. So there's so many options to go with.
So does Varland, is he just going to be a full-time reliever in your mind?
Varland's now this generation's Glenn Perkins, honestly. In my mind, that's a ceiling.
Yeah, there's so many arms you named. The only thing I disagree with is that they'll send either or both, like one of Corey Lewis or Marco Raya back to AA to start next season. I think there's no way you bring them up for a one start, especially Raya's been in AA for a gazillion years.
Yeah.
And then send them back. That would be so disconcerting. You get to St. Paul for one, and then you're like, you're going back.
Did they start? Did they have the AAA is different, right? They have Mondays off. They play 6-game series. Did they have a 5-man rotation exclusively all year? Because it'd be pretty easy to have a 6-man rotation.
I mean, the most stable time the rotation was probably May and June. That was like Dobnak, Bosley, Joe Gunkel was one, but he was not great at all. He had an ERA in 10, and then he was the first cut, which brought in Plutko, and then Plutko was pretty okay throughout the season until he got hurt at the end, and he was coming back from Korea and dealing with a hip injury. So, I mean, even at that level, they were dealing with stuff. So I think the most consistent guys, obviously, were Bosley and Dobenek. They were healthy all season, and they were getting the most starts out there. Yeah, I mean, my only thing is thinking with Lewis or Raya going down is who they sign this offseason. They might make a move like that.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be surprising. And like Bailey Ober was nearly 2 years ago now when he started the 2023 season in AAA, they're going to have something. They're going to have a chip on their shoulder, and they're going to work their ass off, whatever level they're at, to get back up to AAA or to the majors. And I think that can be a good motivator, but you can't let the emotions of such a thing get to you. And I think we saw that work well with Ober last year. And, some of these other guys, Zebby, he's probably going to be that guy this next year in 2025. And hopefully, and it's no discredit to how he's performed. I mean, a bit of it is, but like his development has just been so fast that they're going to take the time to slow him down a bit in April, probably May a bit. If they can take the time not to rush him back up to the majors, if everyone's healthy in the major league rotation, then they're going to keep him at AAA for, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks.
All that to say, I feel like if let's move forward with this Paddock in the bullpen assumption, which I think would be great. I feel like the Twins, we'll call them like 6 through 10 options to start 2025, are going to be better and more and higher upside than they were to start 2024. Because you'll want Corey Lewis, Marco Raya, Andrew Morris, and Zebby, probably, to be honest, to get like quite a bit more seasoning at AAA. But that's like a really strong next 5 that I think have proven at least that they can be major league arms in some role or another. I don't know if they're all going to be starters. Some might switch to the bullpen at some point. But for Andrew Morris, guys, after 2024, stock up, stock down, or stock the same? What's your takeaway on this season?
I think stock up. I mean, like everyone who's going through the minor leagues at such a fast pace, there's going to be growing pains at some level, and we saw that towards the end of the year at AAA. But I think overall, he's proven himself worthy to be in the conversation for a 2025 call-up. Toby Gardenhire said that too. He's said he'd be shocked if he doesn't get his major league debut next year. So I think he's definitely up.
Yeah, I'd say up. I mean, he was healthy all year, pitched well, and that's the thing. Like, as long as you can stay on the radar as a pitcher, your stock's not going down.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the next guy. Theo, you can give us some insights here too. Of course, talking about Marco Raya, the last hope for the 2020 draft class, recently promoted to AAA. I'm still only 22 years old. I think one of the prospects in the Twins farm system who was discussed with the greatest level of frustration because he's been on a very strict pitch count. Rarely sees the lineup a third time. I think he was capped at 75 or 85 pitches through the latter half of the year. I think, like, fair to say, flashes of extreme promise with some inconsistency, really good breaking pitches. So he's listed at 6'1", 170. I don't want to speak to the accuracy of that weight, but that's what he's listed at. 97.2 innings this year, 4.05 ERA, but a 3.64 FIP. Struck out 25% of batters, pretty much exactly the same strikeout percentage as Andrew Morris. 10.5 walk rate, a little bit higher. Fastball up to 96, sinker to 94, cutter, slider, curve. Curveball has a ton of vertical movement, up to 3,000 RPMs of spin on that with over a foot of drop. That pitch looks absolutely nasty. Theo, let's put you on the hot spot first. Is Marco Raya a starter or a reliever? What do we think?
He's a starter. So he is just as frustrated as the rest of us who have complained about his limits, and some of that has been due to injury, but he got through his last start 5 innings on 65 pitches. I think they're going to finally be at the point where they're going to push him to get through 5, 6, maybe 7 a little more consistently next year. And I think the big question is, does he make his major league debut before his 23rd birthday on August 7th? Ooh. I think that's a good benchmark to really see where things are at, because he is one of those pitchers where he could, I think he will have will be more ready for his debut if he's at AAA all season and then gets called up versus Zebby, who started the season at high A, flew through AA. So I think he is definitely in that conversation as well. I mean, his curveball was nasty that start. I mean, they were just throwing it at righties, and then it was doing so well. They threw it against lefties, and no one could hit it at AAA. So it was a good start for that. Obviously, more growing pains will be able to see, and I think that will be with his innings limits and how they extend that. I would be surprised if he gets to 5 before May next year. But there's a lot to look forward to, and I think if as long as he's staying healthy, they'll exceed those limits.
Ooh, I like it. I thought for sure you were going to say reliever. Jeremy, what's you got a strong opinion on that?
So
or move forward?
I'm gonna throw a name out there. Do we remember Fernando Romero?
Of course.
I get the same sort of vibes, right?
But Fernando Romero threw like 99.
But
no?
Yeah, he was a flamethrower.
But from the perspective of that, he was a pitcher that kind of slowly moved through the system and didn't really throw a ton. Like I'm looking at his like he threw 31 innings in the DSL, 45 in the GCL, 12 in the Midwest League, missed a season. Came back in 2016 through 90, and that was like when he kind of popped up on everyone's radar. And then in 2017 threw 125 innings, and then he was a top 100 prospect. And so Marco Raya this year threw just shy of 100, and Fernando Romero was out of the. He was shipped overseas 2 years later. Like he
was not shipped overseas. wasn't he refused entry back into the United States because of a visa issue?
There was
or am I
about
misremembering
that, right?
that?
No, that was happening spring training 2020, and then COVID happened,
and he was sold to the Japanese league, right?
Sure.
But I mean, he just kind of he started in 2018, and then in 2019 kind of becomes a reliever, and then he's out. Like I would have loved to see Twins give him more of an opportunity to transition like they have with Griffin Jacks and Louis Varland, and like give Raya every opportunity to be a starter. I mean, it's not that he's a 2-pitch guy, right? And then go from there. And so I think you can't look at a 22-year-old and say that he's going to be a reliever unless he's going to be a dominant reliever in the majors right now.
Okay.
Right?
That's 100% fair. Let me ask a different question then that kind of has the same thrust. For anyone who has a strong opinion, because I do have a strong opinion on this. Do you feel like the Twins' handling of him over the past season and a half, 2 seasons, whatever, in terms of strict pitch counts, strict innings limits is right? Or conversely, like, do you feel like they should have tried to establish what he looks like the third time through the order by this point in his minor league career?
No, they definitely should have done more to establish, what his numbers look like third time through the order. I don't disagree with that, even though it's a frustrating thing. They've been a little too precautionary. Could that lead him to being another Fernando Romero or even another Jordan Balzabic? Maybe. I wouldn't rule it out yet, but I think with him, he might have a longer leash like Varland has to really try things out as a starter, especially given how young he is. And if he doesn't pan out as a starter by 26, he could still have a good 5-year window of being that dominant reliever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a little less hard on how the Twins handled him because he came in with a shoulder deal. And the reality is he's just turned 22 and he's one level away. I mean, albeit a one start in having one start in St. Paul.
Sure.
But he's got a career line of his whip's about 1.2, strikes out almost 10 per 9. Like, if this is what you would have said after 4 years in the minor leagues, I think you'd take that.
Oh my gosh.
And that's why it's like it was frustrating to watch. It's like 3 innings. Like, is this what we're really doing here? He's thrown 225 career innings, and I think, given where he started, if Connor Prelip can throw 225 innings in the next 4 years, we would all take that as a win.
For
right?
real.
And so the health thing just made that kind of a weird thing because they were treated very much with kid gloves. It was COVID draft. He was a high school arm, didn't pitch. Like I have a little bit more patience with how they handled him, and now
Yeah.
he's and I anticipate that he will be at AAA as a starter, and they can kind of let it turn him loose at 22 years old and potentially be in the majors and good at 23, 24. Like that's exactly what you want out of a high school draft pick.
So I think I would veer even more to that side, Jeremy, on the handling piece, because I think the only thing that matters for a prep arm, not the only thing that matters, the thing that by far matters most is, can you keep them healthy, relatively healthy, on their journey from day one turning pro to potentially making a major league debut. And generally speaking, the Twins have been able to do that. And I think we should add, Marco Raya is an outstanding outcome for a prep pitcher drafted in the 4th round. A guy who has his career numbers in the minors on the doorstep of the majors. You would take that from the slot he was drafted, especially in COVID year.
Yeah.
And any year, I think. Okay, so Marco Raya, just to cap this one off before we move on to the next guy, stock up, stock down, or stock the same? What do you guys think based on his season?
I'd go stock up just because he stayed healthy.
I think that's a huge part of it. I'd still say around the same. I still put him in my top 10 whenever we do our prospect rankings this winter, but I think I need to see more. But like I said, if he can still make things work as a starter by the age of 26, even if he has like a high 3, low 4 ERA looks like a more refined version of Barrios. That's what I'm putting as the ceiling, but we know what his floor could be. He could be Fernando Romero or Jordan Balzovic. So as long as he can be in the middle or higher than that, that's where I'll keep it. But right now, I'd say it's about the same.
Yeah, and it's crazy because as you're talking about his ceiling, I'm looking at Jose Barrios's minor league numbers because it's like that is the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Right? And I would say the likelihood of that is 5%. Right?
5 to 10.
That's if we would have been talking a year ago, I don't think we would have considered it that likely. And so that to me is why I would say, stock up, because I think he could still be a very serviceable arm in the rotation.
All right, that's Marco Raya. We are going to scoot from St. Paul all the way down to the bottom of the Twins minor league system for the next guy, Charlie.
I'll head out then.
So, Theo, thanks, dude. Dude, the insights from live from CHS Field are money. I know Theo's not live right now from CHS Field. I just mean from someone
Season's
who's there.
over. It was good. Not that I haven't been live there this season, and I hope to be again next season, but it's good to get that in.
I just know he's not live there when I see his fan. I know that's not it's not the CHS.
There you go. He's going to start typing abuse at you in the chat for the rest of this now. Okay. We're going to hit on 3 more guys. For 2, we're going down to Fort Myers. I think these are going to be particularly near and dear to people who enjoy this podcast because we're talking about 2023 draftees. Next up, we're going to talk about Charlee Soto, the Twins Comp A pick from 2023. Headlines here: newer to pitching. He's a former shortstop, huge frame, like 6'5". One of the youngest pitchers in all of A-ball, oscillated between absolutely dominant and struggling. Spent the whole season at A-ball. The one other highlight I'll give that I think is relevant is a massive improvement in his strike throwing percentage over the course of the season. 6'5", 210, turned 19 on August 31st, less than a month ago. 74 innings pitched in 2024. A 5.23 ERA, that's pretty high, but check this out. 350 FIP, 381 xFIP, struck out 26.4% of batters, walked 10%. The walk stuff was up and down, but like I said, the strike throwing increased significantly. Fastball tops 98.4 miles an hour. The sinker up to 98 with 14 inches of horizontal break. a cutter, a slider, and a changeup with 17 inches of horizontal break. That is nasty, nasty stuff. So let's start with the basics, I guess, Jeremy. Do you care at all about the unevenness of, like, sometimes there's a start he made it through 1 inning and walked 4 guys. Other times he pitched 4 innings and struck out 10. You care about any of that? Does it
None of that.
matter?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Not at all.
Where is so he pitched the entire year at Fort Myers. Where do you think he is going to start 2025?
So I would guess that he'll start at Fort Myers again, just with the understanding that northern Iowa or central Iowa is not real warm at the beginning of the season, and it would just make sense. So maybe it's not even that he starts in Fort Myers, but maybe it stays an extended and then goes to Cedar Rapids. Like, I anticipate he spends the bulk of his season in Cedar Rapids, but wouldn't shock me to see him not start there in April. Although I feel like that was more of the last regime that did that more so than the current regime.
Mm-hmm.
But it wouldn't shock me if it was Fort Myers. It wouldn't shock me if it was extended. It wouldn't shock me if it was Cedar Rapids. I think the bulk of his innings, and I'm guessing they'll try to push him to about 100 next year, will be in Cedar Rapids. I think that's the most important part.
Yep, agreed. And he will be 19 all of next season, pretty much, with the exception of about a week. So let me give you it could be I'm not sure if this is a hot take, really. This might be a lukewarm take, but I want to see if you agree with it. Charlee Soto has the highest ceiling of any starting pitcher in the Twins minor league system. Agree or disagree?
Agree. But with that comes the caveat of what?
More variance, more variance of outcomes, right? So like a lower floor than others, that certainly than, let's take the cluster of 2022 college guys, right? So you've got what? Zebby, Andrew Morris, KC Culpepper, and Corey Lewis. You could not have dreamed for a better quadruple outcome there, but their floors are all higher than Charlee Soto's.
Significantly higher.
Just much safer.
There's a chance that Charlee Soto never pitches well.
Past AA.
Well, I mean, he was 1-7 this year with a 5.23 ERA and 4 walks per 9. Like, if that, like, I don't care that those are his stats, but it's not like he'd struggled in low A ball at 18. And so the floor is that of he never sees AA, but the ceiling is that of if he puts it all together, he could be the top. He could be the top of your rotation for many years.
Yep.
Right. And
100%.
I think that's what you get when you draft guys like this.
One thing that I wish I'd done, Jeremy, is look up like what his pitch counts were per start, because anecdotally, I feel like, because we just talked about Raya, right? And at the beginning of the season in particular, Raya was on really some like 3 innings per start type of a deal. And I felt like Soto maybe had a longer leash. I mean, it's like a much bigger frame, and it just looks like a major league starter almost already, like as a 19-year-old. It's kind of crazy. And so I'm kind of curious where he ended up. Maybe I'll look into that before next time.
I have it right here. So he threw 44, 49, 62, 49, 59, 68, 35 pitches in his 7th start, which was the one where he walked just one, but only got 2 outs.
Okay.
Then 2 starts in the 40s, and then June 8th had 2 in the 60s, and then 1 in the 70s, then a 60s, 70, 78, 50, 45, 64, and then 3 in the 70s. So batters faced, he faced 20, 1, 2, 3 times, and faced 19 twice, and 4 of those starts were his last 4 starts were 2019, 18, and 19. So he just wasn't getting the third opportunity either. And so I think that's something that isn't far away, that he'll be getting that third time through, because he was pitching. I mean, he never came out. It looks like he never came out for the 6th inning.
I think that sounds right.
And so I think that there was a very concrete plan for him. And if you just extend that a little bit next year, that's going to be pretty good. He only gave up 6 home runs, had strikeouts of
that two-seam fastball is a ground ball machine,
right? And so there's a ton of ceiling there, and it's going to take a while to develop, and who knows if it's going to take 4 years or if he's going to figure it out and it's going to take 2 more years.
Yeah. Soto, one of my favorite follows in the Twin system. The reason I asked about that pitch count thing specifically was because if you think about his frame for a 19-year-old, you don't have a lot of guys that age that are 6'5" and look like they're already built like big league pitchers. And so I think that's just like a useful lens for like Dason Hill next year when he starts. If you don't be mad if he gets 3 innings at a time, or he's on a 50 pitch count. Or 45 to start his minor league career, because I think it's highly likely.
This is the roadmap.
Yeah.
Right. The most impressive stat for me on July 13th, 5 innings, faced 20 batters, had 19 swinging strikes.
That's wild.
78 pitches and 19 of them were swings and misses.
That's crazy. That's when you know the stuff is on. Charlee Soto, stock up, stock down, or stock the same, Jeremy?
Oh, I mean, he like a broken record, but he was healthy all year, and 75 innings, I think I said, and so that's it would be hard for his stock to go down as a high schooler making his pro debut, unless he was absolutely awful and couldn't ever. Right, and so good for me.
Agreed. Stock up. That was a stretch. I want to say it was like through July and August combined. That was like an 8-start stretch where he was absolutely destroying everybody. Okay. Next, we're gonna move to bats. 2 bats to finish off. Next guy I want to talk about also spent the entire season at Fort Myers. That is Brandon Winokur. And I think he's like kind of the most fascinating position player prospect in a way for me in the Twin system. 3rd-round pick from 2023, lauded for his athleticism, massive raw power, with major swing and miss concerns. That was the scouting report coming out. He is 19 years old, listed at 6'6", 210. Here's what he did in an entire season at Fort Myers. He hit 249, 327, 434. That's good for 761 OPS, above league average. Struck out 28% of the time, walked 8.3% of the time. It's like low contact, high end zone whiff, high chase. He reduced his chase percentage really significantly at the end of the season. In August, he hit 277, 327, 543 with 12 extra base hits in 24 games, including a 3 home run game down the stretch for Fort Myers. How do you pick this apart, man? Because I feel like there's some stuff where you're like, yes, and there's other numbers where you're like, ugh. And it's I don't know about you, but for me, it's really hard to kind of arrive at a conclusion for Winokur other than he's still like really raw, and there's some really great stuff and some stuff that is just a little bit scary.
Yeah, I think you like having players like this in your system because they could hit and be fantastic. These are also the players in your system that, when making a move to help your major league club, finish deals, right? Because they're lottery tickets. I mean, he remains a lottery ticket. 115 strikeouts at playing against guys in the Florida State League, or is that what we call it still? Or have they changed the name?
It is.
115 strikeouts in 411 plate appearances, and only 34 walks. Like he's not Erod, right? The weird thing is that he played primarily at shortstop.
I know. So that's my next question.
That's weird.
Where is Brandon Winokur going to play? He saw time at shortstop. He saw time in center field. He is, I think, like the scouting report on the defense is like raw, but like incredibly athletic, right? And so I think of him a bit like O'Neal Cruz from the Pirates, right? Where he's not that fast, but like he's quick and athletic, but he's also extremely tall and gangly.
Right.
What are you gonna do? What do the Twins do here? Just keep moving him around, and eventually something clicks. Try and maintain the flexibility, the versatility. What do you think the approach is here defensively for Winokur?
I mean, I'm guessing he plays shortstop until he proves that he can't, and then goes to third base, and could play first base. Probably most likely is a left fielder, right? Like he's a corner guy, and so that's what's weird when I look, and it's like he played 61 games at short, 20 games at center, and then 12 games between third base and right field. Like his bat profiles as a corner bat. And so, but his bat, he needs to, like you mentioned that he reduced his chase rate.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to matter if he can't hit strikes.
Sure.
Like Billy Amick is that same player now, right? And so that's
actually an interesting comparison.
These are players you love to have because if they hit, great. But the whiff rate on players like this, Jamie,
super high. Super high. Fair. Okay, so you kind of answered my last question, right? Which was like, does the improved end of the season give you confidence he can continue to progress? Stock up, stock down, or stock the same for Winokur?
For me, it's the same, which I think is a win because I was convinced that it was going to not work out. And so the fact that he did what he did, 23 stolen bases, 14 home runs, didn't look – I mean, I expected his stats to look way worse than they do.
Yeah.
And so it's the same. It's still a giant question mark with an extremely loud package and high ceiling.
I'm going to be a little bit more giving than you and say stock up, and here's why. Winokur put up above average production in a pitcher's league as a 19-year-old in his first full season of professional baseball. And that is not to say that there are not warts to the profile, because we've just listed a whole bunch of concerns I think are fair. But I do think that's impressive. We talked about the contrast quite a bit a while ago of like between him and Eric Batanti, a similar kind of profile bat from the 2023 draft taken by the Brewers, and they gave him a ton of time in the Arizona Complex League where he like crushed before bringing him up to to single A. Winokur was thrown in the deep end right from the jump, and I think like you say, he did well to kind of not only just keep his head above water, but be an above average hitter in that league. Last guy, whose numbers I did not put in here, but I do have to hand, is KC Culpepper, the Twins' first round pick from 2024. He was selected 21st overall. He is now at high A, shortstop, 21 years old. Absolutely demolished low A before, I think it's fair to say, wearing down a little bit at the end of the season. Across two levels, and these numbers are really significantly impacted by just struggling at Cedar Rapids. He hit 242, 333, 94. That's good for 724 OPS, 3 home runs, 8 extra base hits in 25 games. Only struck out 13% of the time, walked 10% of the time, 80% success rate in stolen bases, 82% contact rate. Just a couple of notes from his time at Fort Myers I think are interesting. He chases a lot, 33%. That's pretty high. It's like 8-ish% above league average. He also just destroyed the ball there. 35% of his batted ball events were hit 95 miles per hour or above. He did not swing and miss once at Fort Myers at a pitch in the strike zone. 0% in zone whiff. Have you changed your mind, Jeremy, on KC Culpepper being a boring draft pick?
Not really.
That's a no. That's a no. You're like, eh.
Yeah, no, I mean, but in fairness, he played 26 games after a long college season. I don't know that not every pick has to be super exciting, right? I think like even Brooks Lee, that was like we had a pretty good feeling who Brooks Lee was.
Yeah.
And he was never, I don't think anybody expected him to be like this, perennial all-star, but he was going to be a solid, probably first division regular,
Yep.
could maybe stick it short, high IQ baseball player. Like there wasn't any super loud tools. And I think we've seen Brooks Lee make it to the majors, not been great, but comes up with some big hits. I think Culpepper is going to do a lot of those same things, just kind of fits in to the organization, and almost like I hate to do this, but like how Nick Gordon kind of progressed through and just kind of checked the boxes and got an opportunity. And I think that would be, Nick Gordon was a top 5 pick or top 6 pick. And I think that's why there was a lot of disappointment. But if you were getting that sort of production out of a 3rd round pick or 4th round pick, it's like, hey, we hit on this guy. And Culpepper is a late 1st round pick. I think the expectations, he's going to be a Major League Baseball player. But it's like, what is he going to do to separate himself from being just like a replacement level type player like Austin Martin? Austin Martin brings some tools to the table that are important, but he doesn't have like that super loud tool. Caleb Culpepper is not going to be an above average defender at short if he sticks there, right? He's not going to hit 30 home runs. He's going to, hit his dozen home runs. He's going to steal some bases. He's going to be solid. But yeah, it's not that loud. The range of outcomes with Culpepper is not enormous.
Yeah, fair. I like the kind of Brooks Lee solid everyday regular kind of comparison there. I'm going to bat for his defense, though. He looked incredibly good at shortstop from what I saw, but you might be right. One last question on Culpepper, then we'll get out of here. Any concern over the fall off at high A, or that's just like it's been a whole long season for these guys? See you in 2025.
Yeah, 17 games. Like you could have a horrendous 17 games, Matt Wallner with the Twins, and then come back and have a really good season, right? I mean, that if he would have played 70 games and his stats would have been like this, it would have been like, yeah, if he starts next year at Cedar Rapids and 70 games in, he's batting 210 with a 31% on base. That would be alarming.
Fair enough.
But 17 games, it's hard to really put too much stock into that.
Fair enough. Good deal. Okay, well, we're right around time, so we're going to call it for today. Just previewing what we have for next week, we'll finish out with some very quick housekeeping. Next week, we're going to spend time digging into AFL rosters. We will be talking Twins, Brewers, and Cubs. We will also know the fate of this beleaguered Twins Major League team, whether they made the playoffs or not. So we'll be able to jump into all of that. And then we'll continue.
If they happen to make the playoffs,
yeah,
what is it? Is it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
I haven't even looked that far ahead, my friend.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they're going to be on the road no matter what at this point.
Okay, so we might be rescheduling Wednesday if by some miracle.
I'd presume John Bonus will organize watch parties if they make it in, and I would also assume the time slots, if they make it in, would be similar to last year. So
that's true.
Unfortunately for two guys working in education, it's going to be end of school day time, but that could also be to your benefit.
Could also be PTO.
Coaching football.
That was your problem last year.
Yeah.
Boo, Jeremy, stop being such a good person and pouring into the youth.
Coaching football is like the funnest part of my day. So
I coach 5-year-olds playing soccer, which is probably worse than coaching middle school, high school football.
I mean, it definitely is worse.
Yeah. Okay, real quick housekeeping stuff. Ways you can support the show. You can find us on YouTube at Destination the Show. All of our episodes are uploaded there. Anywhere you get your podcasts. And you can also find us on Twitter at DTS_pod1. We appreciate the support. We will be back sometime next week, pending the Twins' very feeble playoff chances. to talk Arizona Fall League baseball. Until then, enjoy the end of the season if you possibly can. Catch you guys later.